Many Constant Worlds is a meta disjointed journey through Stephen King's Dark Tower series. I'm Kat, she, her, and I'm glad I'm not the worst fangirl imaginable.
I'm Taryn, they, them, and that remains to be seen. I am glad that we're moving to a new book, even if we still haven't actually made it into the actual Dark Tower books.
We're getting there.
It's arguable if these are actually Dark Tower books. I will just say that.
I think we have some strong arguments, though. Like, that's the point.
Yeah, I don't know what podcast you think you're listening to, but this is a litigation podcast where we argue everything, and currently it's whether or not every single word that Stephen King has ever written actually relates to the Dark Tower.
Yep, pretty much. Last time we finished The Eyes of the Dragon, I feel like we got a solid reason for that being connected to the Dark Tower.
Yeah, it takes place in the world where the Dark Tower is, and Flag comes from there, maybe.
Possibly.
Kinda. On a much better Eyes of the Dragon and online fandom right around the same time note and Dark Tower note, there was a gentleman, he was a musician who made a soundtrack that went along with, like, the Dark Tower books. It was, like, a very electronic, like, synth type. Like, I don't know how you would classify it, but he made all this music himself, and I would go on, because he had, like, previews of it online, and I would listen to them constantly over my dial-up internet, because that's all we had. And just for reference, I was 16 in 2004, so this was, like, circa 2003 to 2005, and I sent this gentleman a message, because this was back when it was quite easy to do that, and explained that I loved his music, and that it embodied the Dark Tower to me. It was amazing, and that at the time I also fancied myself a musician because I sang and everything. And he wrote back that he remembered what it was like to be a poor musician and got my address and sent me a copy of the album for free.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was the nicest thing anyone had, like, ever done, and I wore that CD out. It was just, it's, to this day, it's still my favorite. I've been trying to find the music from it. So if anybody knows who that person is, or if you happen to be listening, I went through some bad times as a teenager, and I still to this day remember that kindness. So you fucking rock. You are the fucking coolest person ever.
Absolutely.
The really good story that happened, so.
Fair. So let's get into a bad story then. Not bad as in poorly written, though I will admit it's not my favorite so far of Stephen King's work.
Yeah, my apologies for the diversion.
No.
But
we're wrapping up properly to our having read The Eyes of the Dragon.
That's fair.
For this episode, we have read the first part, I have read the first part of Misery, titled Annie.
Yeah, as a warning, I have not. I am not reading Misery along with those of us who are. I have moderately significant medical trauma and some chronic health issues that means that this would be too triggering for me. I'm here with everybody, and I'm excited to hear more about this story, and hopefully I'll be watching the movie with everybody, but I won't be reading this one along. And I encourage anybody else out there for whom the trigger warnings are too much, take it this way with me. You can be on my side of the table, and we can make Kat do the work.
Yeah, I get to be Virgil this time. Also probably unreliable.
Oh, God. Honestly, she's probably a much better Virgil than I am. I can't see her book from here, but it probably has about 10,000 little taggies in it, and the reading got done properly, and if ever we wanted a better Virgil, y'all are gonna just wish that it was usually Kat, so.
Or they're gonna be tired of all of the things.
I'll still be interrupting, don't worry. Now I'll just be interrupting with even more dumb shit to say.
I'm gonna just kind of start by summing up as much of the story to the point that we read. Part 1 begins with a quote from German poet Friedrich Nietzsche, which I looked up how to say his name because I've always heard it said Nietzsche.
Yeah.
It's not said that way, apparently.
I had a whole fucking college class where the teacher made us, like, we had to say Nietzsche. We had a whole section on Nietzsche. I promise you, like, I believe you. I'm sure that's how it's supposed to be said. I'm going to end up saying Nietzsche. My apologies.
That's perfectly fine. I looked it up because
so
I'm
frustrating.
like, I've always heard this said Nietzsche.
Yeah.
But I want to actually try and say this right in case that's wrong because the spelling is wild. But yes, Friedrich Nietzsche is what the internet, so take it.
He hung out with Van Gogh.
It's a very, very appropriate quote, so I'm going to use it here because I'm pretty sure it's free for all anyway. When you look into the abyss also looks into you.
That's a Nietzsche quote?
That is a Nietzsche quote.
If you had just told me that quote right now and asked me who I thought said it, I would have been like Lovecraft or some shit.
Yeah, no, fuck that guy.
Clearly I didn't pay attention in class.
That's at least what this claims it is. That's what Stephen King has told me, but he could also be lying. So we are introduced to characters Annie and Paul, though neither are deep dive like the way that we got the character intros in Eyes of the Dragon where we had like these chapters, sections about them. But that actually brings up another thing as I just slipped up and said chapters. Guess what else is written in stanzas?
So are we thinking this is just a stylistic choice of Stephen King's that he just held for, that he just keeps doing? Or are there other books of his that are maybe more chapters or...
I think to some degree it's a stylized thing, but there are some parts of this that are very much like reading an epic poem again, which was interesting. Because of the way we kind of talked about the Eyes of the Dragon, because Misery is not a book I would have assumed would go that way. But legitimately, there are some, like the opening paragraphs of this are really, they made me feel like I was reading the Odyssey in some sense, like that just like vibe.
Really?
So I don't know.
Given that I'm pretty sure he already had some movies that had done pretty well by now.
Yeah.
Do you think that this one was written with the idea of that then, of epic poetry? Or do you get the feel that maybe he's writing it seeing a movie already in his head? Seeing it more that this is already going to suit...
Big screen?
No, a script. Like like...
I hadn't thought about that. It's possible. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, obviously, I haven't really read it or looked, so I can't say, but... Given the subject matter, my impression, my understanding is that most of Misery is a dude in a bed getting like yelled at and hurt a lot. And that doesn't sound very epic. It sounds like what's happening while the Princess Bride is happening.
And I think that's it. It's because like the first couple of chapters are actually like the accident, I believe.
Yeah.
Of like how he ends up in that bed. And the way that they get into it is just... The first stanza, I can read all of the first stanza to you because it's literally 4 lines.
Yeah.
Umber 1. Run Umber 1. It's the noises, by the way. Fionn. These sounds. Even in the haze. That's the entire first stanza. So I could see that being really good movie.
Or a play. Like a stage play.
Which would be great on stage.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking it because the Odyssey obviously is a epic poem, but I think it was also it was an epic poem that was meant to be performed, wasn't it?
I believe so.
It was definitely meant to be passed along orally, which is something that we talked about with Eyes of the Dragon. And so if this is something that in his head he's seeing it performed on a stage. Again, to my knowledge, the cast is pretty small. It
is.
Annie and the guy in the bed.
Yep, Paul.
And I think I've always seen it in my head. Like, even though I've seen the clip of her with the...
Yeah.
No spoilers. I think we've all seen the clip of Kathy Bates with the sledgehammer.
Yep.
I feel like that's something that you could pull off really well on a stage.
Yeah.
And all of this could be done really well on a stage. And I think Stephen King, we've seen, even just to this point, a lot of versatility.
Yeah.
I wonder, now my brain is kind of...
No, I think you make a really strong point because so much of the book is that he can't even get out of this one room. So that means our set's really cheap. It's a bed and faux door for Annie to come in and out of. It's really really straightforward what you need on stage.
I'm not like, I don't write a lot, but when I do write, I see things a certain way in my head. And sometimes you see a movie or a music video or I don't know, I don't always see it play out like as a book.
Yeah.
I wonder then if he saw Misery playing out. Almost like how they say Mario 2 is actually a play of what happened in Super Mario 1. Like, that's why they'll have the little masks and stuff.
Yeah.
And since you said it's that Misery is a response to what happened to, like, the kickback from Eyes of the Dragon.
Yeah.
It almost makes me wonder if he's going like, we're all on a stage. This is me and you, reader, on a stage, and this is the play that's taking place and happening, I guess.
Yeah. No, I think you've made a very strong point, because really thinking about it, I could see this working well under that structure, and that writing style would make sense then.
Yeah, I don't know why he wouldn't just write it as a script then, but I don't know if things would... I don't think we could have like a Crimes of Grindelwald just straight... I think other things get sold just as scripts, and we don't support J.K. Rowling in this house. But,
no, we don't. Fuck her too.
That was given to me for Christmas a few years ago, like before shit really hit the fan with that. And I think it's the only thing I own that's written in like script form that way.
Yeah.
So,
well, and you know what's interesting is that, like, I remember my mom had done, you know, the like scams from many years ago of the like, pay us $1 and we'll get you 5 of whatever, 5 CDs, 5 books. And she had gotten mystery novels. And one of them was an Agatha Christie that was actually done as scripts. And I know that she has other stuff done that way, but then she also has like her Perot series, which I think are just like books.
yeah.
Versus being structured like a script. But it was so uncommon. We just don't do that very often. I think because people, like, if you're going to write the stage directions, why wouldn't you just write a description of how they did it?
I do think that's one mark against that theory, though, because I think if anybody could have, Stephen King could have said, I just wrote this in this format, make a movie now. Because by then, I think Carrie and probably Cujo had been released.
I think so.
And done gloriously.
In my search to get a copy of Misery, because I've started that to track a copy down.
Yeah.
It sounds like it streams on Paramount Plus, but I don't have that.
I need Paramount Plus. That's where Star Trek lives. And Star Trek came into my life very late, and I haven't seen all of it. And like Next Generation is ridiculous. I look out for that podcast next, because Next Generation is fucking the most... I thought Doctor Who was outlandish. No. Sorry.
I'm finding there's a lot of movies or a lot of books I didn't even know became movies, even like the straight to TV stuff.
Yeah.
Because I know there's some that I knew existed and hadn't watched because I had really wanted to watch Desperation.
Yeah.
I love that book. And then when we get to it, I am reluctant but going to try and do it anyway, watch the miniseries on The Shining, but we'll see. We'll see. The hedge creatures like freaked me out in the book.
Yeah.
I was like 16, 17 years old. Maybe they don't freak me out anymore. I don't know. We'll see.
You know what? I didn't read Misery. Maybe we can watch that one when it's hedge creature time. You can get a snack or something. I'll watch the hedge creatures. I'll let you know when it's over. We'll comfort is king. Like, this is meant to be fun.
It is meant to be fun.
And that goes for everybody else too. Comfort is king. Don't do anything. There's no reason to force yourself into stuff if you're not having a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all just here to have a good time. Anywho, so Paul is our writer, and he is in a terrible accident following completing his first book since the death of his iconic character, Misery Chastain. I can't say the name with a straight face.
All I hear when I hear Paul, I just think Paul Atreides, so...
I mean, this is very much a typical hero's journey, just a different, route than Dune. So right now he is high on life and drunk off his ass. And that is what leads to the accident that he gets in, which is, I believe, the sounds that I read from that first entire stanza. And he wakes up to Annie Wilkes shoving pain meds into his mouth. Supposedly, Annie found Paul and saved him, brought him back to her place to care for him as he heals from 2 broken legs.
I'm sorry, can you repeat Misery's last name for me again?
Chastain.
Chastain. Okay.
Chastain.
Yeah, it's like Jessica Chastain.
Yeah.
Who is Paul Atreides' mother. But, sorry, and then Annie Wilkes?
Wilkes.
Okay.
Wilkes.
I'm keeping notes because, again, I haven't read this one. I will be reading the next one, probably. We will have to see how bad it gets. I am a baby.
So Annie seems to have some kind of medical training. Paul speculates that she must have been a nurse before just based on some of the things she seems to be capable of. He also learns that he is in a place called Sidewinder, Colorado, far from anyone who could hear him scream. In the meantime, he also learns that Annie doesn't like it when he doesn't listen. When Paul makes Annie angry, her face goes blank, and this is where I believe that quote comes into play. She becomes a very awful warden, and she very much seems to check out, like, mentally, like she's not there anymore.
So are we talking like there was a little girl who had a little curl right in the middle of her forehead, checks out and doesn't like it, or are we talking like an early depiction of like dissociative identity disorder?
I'm pretty positive she's dissociating from everything that I understand of that.
Well, I mean, even dissociating, I'm talking, because they don't call it multiple personality disorder anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm talking like, does a different person than Annie seem to take over? Like, does she have an alter? That
it doesn't feel like it's delineated very much,
okay.
like in terms of like she becomes different, because it's almost like when she is present, she still believes that the things that she did in that state there's nothing wrong with them. Mm-hmm. She just isn't as easily, like if you keep her in a good mood, she does not turn into the abyss and go kind of blank on you.
But it does have a name. It's called the Abyss.
That's kind of how it's described. It's. I think that's why he uses that Nietzsche quote at the beginning. Is that when you stare into the abyss stares back.
Okay.
Because she just, like, the way Paul describes the way she just sort of goes blank on him. Her eyes kind of get dark. Her face just kind of turns into this just like endless nightmare for him.
So I will obviously you already know, but I will let our constant readers at home know, while I do not have dissociative identity disorder, I have PTSD and some other mental health struggles, and this is part of why I'm not reading this book. I have my own struggles with dissociation. I'm doing fantastically. I do a lot better. If we get technical at any point, we are not talking shit on anybody at all. No offense is ever meant to be given or taken. It's just something that there is experience with in this house because I do it and cats had to see it. I just wanted to make that clear because it feels like...
I think that's a great point. We're not trying to talk out of our ass.
Yeah.
We're also not trying to talk down on anybody, and I certainly hope no one is offended or hurt by anything we say.
But that's why I'm asking specifically if there is something that takes over and is named, because that is not something that I deal with when I float. When we all float down here. Oh shit. That's going to be interesting when we get to it. But I would describe my own experience as floating, but it's still just me. Something that has come up over the years as I've been dealing with this is, when you have alters or something like that, they generally are, it is someone else, and it would be someone who's named like the Abyss or something, but that also could point to, in the fictional realm, that's something that could point to like demonic possession. So that's why I'm going, oh shit. So there might even be something that's named in here.
I think it's ridiculously interesting, frankly.
Yeah.
Because, it is. One of the things that ends up happening is he does something and she ends up spilling a little bit of soup, if I remember correctly. And I might have this particularly wrong. She gets pissed off, throws the soup across the room, makes a mess, gets mad at him, and this is one of the times she shifts, goes to clean it up and makes him drink the mop water. Afterwards, she's just like, don't make me do that again. And even when she is back to happy Annie,
Yeah.
she's still just like, you don't want to make me do that again, do you? I don't know so much that they're two separate entities. I could also have a lack of understanding on how some of that works, and I'm fully aware of that.
Stephen King could as well.
Yes.
Especially in the 80s.
Yes.
He could be trying to present that. I would be interested to look into that, and I'm not gonna lie, if anybody's on Reddit, I might be coming for your theories. You will get credit, but I might be coming to see what you may have already said about this possibility and what might have already been written about this, because obviously Misery's been out for a really long time.
Yes.
I spend a lot of time on r/The Dark Tower and r/Stephen King because my phone has heard us doing this podcast, and I don't even think I'm sub there. It just shows up now. I'm interested to know if other people might have picked up. I'm sure they have, people who have more knowledge or insight into that idea.
No, and I think it's important because he does mention in here that he did talk to medical professionals, including, I think, a psychiatrist. I mean, he flat out admits any mistakes are mine.
Yeah.
They were great. But it was also done in the 80s. So we've learned so much more about mental health in the last, oh dear God, 40 years.
Well, and the fact that they don't even call that multiple personality disorder anymore. But at the time, it sounds like what a lot of the understanding of that could have been.
Yeah.
Especially if there's things called like integration, where you start integrating alters and you don't always black out. Sometimes you know what happens and stuff. It is not something that I know a lot about, because again, it's not like dissociative disorders are a spectrum the same way that a lot of mental health unwellness is a spectrum, and neurodivergence is a spectrum, and all of that is a spectrum. When you get to what used to be called multiple personality disorder, it's just towards the far end of the kind of dissociative spectrum, or at least that's how it's been explained to me by like the professionals that I have been seeing now for years. And I'm not at that end of the spectrum. I dissociate as part of my PTSD, but it's not, I don't have like alters or anything. There's a lot of really interesting YouTube channels by people who do have that, who do kind of have those situations, and I might do a little research between this episode and the next episode. Like I said, I'm coming for you, Reddit.
I think that's great. I think it would be a wonderful thing to bring and chat about.
I'll see what I can find, and please, no worries, I will make sure that credit goes where credit is due. Unless I find things on Wikipedia, then it's Wikipedia. But I will warn you if it's Wikipedia.
Yeah. Annie goes blank, and she tortures Paul. And she does all of this while claiming to be his biggest fan. And she is actively reading his most recent novel because she is a huge fan of Misery Chastain books. She doesn't know yet that Misery's gonna die. And Paul is both, I think, a little excited for her to find out, but also really dreading because he's found out she's kind of crazy.
He's been kidnapped at this point, right?
Yes, he's just kept in some woman's room.
I love the idea of the writer being like, but like you read my work, you're into my work. That sounds like authors that I'm friends with, like published authors that I'm friends with. That does sound like, but you're interested to like beta read my next, like you want to, like,
yeah.
But what do you think of my...
For what it's worth, though, I don't know that he's going down that close because he is so happy to have Misery Chastain dead. He fucking hated her, apparently.
That also sounds like the author people that I know, where once they're like done, they're done.
And we are actually finally introduced to the term constant reader. It is not a positive term, but you know what? If Stephen King wants to call all of us that...
You know what?
We're just following his lead.
We just took the term back.
We took the term back.
Where he doesn't get to decide how we feel.
You know what? We all just need to be aware of this. Annie Wilkes was the perfect audience, a woman who loves stories without having the slightest interest in the mechanics of making them. She was the embodiment of that Victorian archetype, constant reader. She did not want to hear about his concordance and indices because to her, misery and the characters surrounding her were perfectly real. Indices meant nothing to her. If he had spoken of a village census in Little Dunthorpe, she might have shown some interest. So, yeah, that's a constant reader, apparently.
That feels important, though.
It does feel important.
Calling out the indices, so we need to keep an eye on those.
Yeah, and your concordance.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Because that comes up as a result of Annie decides that the best way to thank her for all of her hard work is for Paul to write her a super secret special edition of the next Misery Chastain novel after she finds out Misery dies. Because she was pissed.
So clearly, she's never heard of Death of the Author or fan fiction. I mean, I'm spitballing here. I guess in the 80s that was less well known, but by then we definitely had, I don't know what y'all know about the history of fan fiction, but I can bring that to the next episode too. Kat, how much do you know about the history of fan fiction?
I know that fan fiction exists. I know some authors hate it, some authors don't mind it. I know some authors have had a very unique relationship with it, and I know my immortal.
Yeah, Anne Rice is dead now. She doesn't get to have her wrong point of view about fan fiction. Fan fiction started, well, I'm sure there has been fan fiction as long as there has been fiction. And I can do a better breakdown later if that is wanted. But what I can tell you off the top of my head is that, the historical record of fan fiction was in fanzines for Star Trek. I don't mean to keep bringing up Star Trek. It's not that it's on my mind, and power to Trekkies. I am not a huge Trekkie. I got into this very recently, but it was in fanzines for Star Trek. People would write in their fan fiction stories. That's also where the term Mary Sue came up, because somebody was writing a fan fiction, and they made fun of all of these OCs that people would write in who would get married to Captain Kirk or to Spock or something, and they named her Mary Sue. It was essentially like a Wesley character, but named Mary Sue, because that's what people would always write, is a young female who was amazing at everything she did and had no flaws except for a very cute mole or something, and was also straight out of school, was it was always a Mary Sue.
Was she adorably clumsy?
I have no idea, but probably a Bella Swan type.
It's all about the bend and snap. And you can only bend and snap if you accidentally dropped something.
Oh, no. They, like a true Mary Sue, she could never know she was beautiful. And then she'd have to flirt. You can't flirt because you can't know you're beautiful, so never. But there was also, of course, Yowie. There was always, Spock and Kirk Yowie happening. Probably not called Yowie. I don't know if the term / happened there either. There are people, I have learned this from people who have done great actual academic takedowns of how this has occurred. But my point here being, if you are unhappy with a direction that an author has taken, write the direction that you want it to go. Just know you can't make money off of it unless you make your own. E.L. James wanted a much spicier version of Twilight. And then once she wrote it very well, she changed some of the names and put it in Oregon instead of Washington, and she got to make money. You can just know that at first you really can't make it make money, and you're going to have to change some shit if you do eventually. Otherwise, do a My Immortal. Do whatever you want. And if anybody gets on the internet and gets pissy with you, tell them to move along. The internet is infinite. They can find something that they like. Like, you can move on and find someplace else to be. And Annie, you definitely don't have to make the author write you a super special.
Okay, but the thing is she does have the author, like, right there. And we don't know what other people might have done if they'd had the author right there.
I'm not gonna lie. I think if I had Stephen King, like, right here with me, like, tied to a bed.
He's not even tied down. He's just got two broken legs.
I always remember him as tied down in the scenes I've seen from the movie.
I do believe in those scenes
okay.
he gets tied down, but otherwise he's got two broken legs, so he cannot move out of this bed. He's just kind of stuck in it.
Oh, so he's just kind of a pussy. Because there's a whole story about a woman in South Africa who, like, she'd been horribly tortured, brutalized, a lot of other very horrible things that happened to her. Her entire, like, intestines were spilling out. She was having to, like, hold them in. And she, like, crawled her ass to the freeway and got fucking help. This dude just has two broken legs. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't have that much pity for him. He just wanted attention. Like, I don't mean, like, medically wanted, like, he wasn't like, I have broken legs, take care of me. He wanted attention for his writing. He wanted Annie to, like, misery. Like, he wanted this. Well, he was like, read my stuff.
Well, all of this came up because she finds out that Misery dies. She runs in, pissed the fuck off.
Which was his point with killing Misery to begin with.
Yep. But at least this time, instead of, like, torture, like, not physically torturing, she does still technically torture him. Her hulking out, instead of, like, making him drink mop water, was she took off for a few days. Left him with no water, no food, no pain relief. He does get out. He does go out and he sees the rest of the house a little bit, tries the phone. So for anybody asking, why didn't he try the phone? It's not working. She broke the phone. He gets himself some, at least, pain pills, so that he can get back into there. And she comes back from her, like, time of calming down and says, I've come up with the perfect plan. You can write me a special edition.
Maybe if she read Indices, he could have been like, hey, here's a PS. She didn't die. It would probably have saved him a lot of time.
She also brings Paul a wheelchair and an old typewriter that's missing the N key and a stack of high-end paper.
Does she think if it's missing the N key, he, like, can't... Like, that's gonna, like, hobble him from being able to... I think hobbling is just on my mind because his legs are broken, but, like, that's going to prevent him from being able... Like, death can still be typed. That doesn't have an N in it. Maybe he can't write the end because there's no N.
Or but I guess he must not have gotten out at this point if she brings him the wheelchair at this time. So, yeah, never mind. Scratch that
Finn.
bit.
He can't write Finn. At the end, he can't write, like...
Look, she got a good price on the typewriter. And that was the important bit.
This is over. He could write that. And is it missing the whole key or is it just missing the top? Because then he could put, like, a little eraser on it so he can still hit it. Be like, you have not stopped me from being able to make ends.
I know that he is incapable of making ends.
How dare you make a better pun than any of my jokes? It's incapable.
Yeah.
How dare you?
But there is a catch. As if there's not a massive catch already.
The catch is he can't type in.
The catch is that he has to burn the manuscript that he had with him, which is the one he just finished writing that sent him onto his bender and led him to the accident that that got him two broken legs and stuck in Annie's house. So he has to burn Fast Cars is what it's called. Annie has already, like, looked at this book a little bit. She didn't like it. She also got into a pretty big argument with Paul about all the cursing, because she's not okay with that.
Does she like his books at all?
She likes the Misery books.
This isn't one of those?
No. Misery Chastain.
This doesn't have...
Misery Chastain series is a set of basic romance novels, Victorian England style romance novels.
How is he supposed to write Misery Chastain with no N key? She's like, you better marry her off quickly to, like, a Howl or some shit. Like,
I do believe she gets married prior to the end of the series. Before she dies, she's married to a lord of some kind. Honestly, almost sounds like, to some degree, it's a throuple in waiting. She's technically married to one dude. I think his name's Ian. But she's married to one guy. But she's having an affair with, like, his best friend. And his best friend is the one who got Misery pregnant. They are letting Ian believe that it's his baby because they both love him so much.
So the last book we read, we had, like, an ace king. I mean, like, king, like, you go king, but, like, also royalty. We had an ace king. I can't think of a better word. And now we have, like, a proto-thruple.
Yeah.
I guess not proto, just a thruple.
I mean, technically, it doesn't sound like for sure Ian and Joffrey are, like, together, but they seem awful together.
He can't write Ian either. She really is like, no, this isn't. No wonder. I'm understanding now why the N key is a problem. He's like, you want this to happen, but you made sure there's no possible way for me to make this happen. I'll just have to type like Misery, this lady, and that guy over there. I realized she wanted a good deal on it, but did she not see this is going to bother me. I need to know, does the N key get fixed?
No.
He never gets around this N key problem.
No. I mean, the fix is to write in the N's. Yeah. This is what happened before everybody had a laptop.
I'm shooketh.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I hate it.
That's fair. So.
Oh my god, on a typewriter, you don't even have like a delete. You'd have to like white it out. I forgot.
Yep.
This is the worst.
This is the worst.
And she's gonna make him burn, like...
She's gonna make him burn the manuscript that he had written, that he had in his bag when he was going out celebrating. She brings it to him and basically just tells him, you gotta burn it. And this entire burning scene made me think so much of Carrie.
Oh, see, it makes me think of Little Women again, because Amy burns Joe's manuscript and it's like a huge point of contention, and then Joe goes out ice skating with Lori and Amy wants to go, and then they leave Amy behind, and then Amy doesn't know that the middle of the pond is too soft to go ice skating in, and then she falls into the pond and almost dies, and then Joe has to like automatically forgive her, and it's this really fucked up story about how like never go to sleep on your anger, and like Joe is somehow made out to be the bad guy, even though Amy's still burned because they didn't even have a typewriter. Joe had written an entire manuscript with her fucking hands. Pages and pages and pages and pages. And Amy had fucking burned it because Amy wasn't invited on the double date to go to the theater. Which admittedly, I don't think Joe knew was a double date because Joe had no interest in dating Lori. But Meg was trying to date. She was definitely trying to get with the other dude because she eventually marries him. And Amy's being a little prick in the whole scene going, well, I don't understand why I can't go to the theater. And it's like, because you're 12 and you're not supposed to be there and you weren't invited and you're being a little shithead. And then to get back at everybody, she burns Joe's manuscript. And then rather than her having to deal with that or learn an actual lesson, she just almost dies in ice water. And then Joe's like, I don't know why I can't get over my temper. Maybe because you shouldn't have had to get over your temper. And if you cut one word of that rant, I will quit.
Will you even remember?
No, probably not.
Annie says you gotta burn the manuscript. She brings it to him. And something I'm curious to see if this pings us anything for you. According to Annie, 9 is a power number. She makes him burn the pages in groups of 9. When it is doubled, it's lucky. So she makes Paul burn the intro and the outro in 9 parts in the middle. I know 19, and obviously, like, multiples of 3 are generally kind of, like, things come in 3s.
Yeah.
I think that's a rule amongst, like, every freaking subject under the sun.
Yeah.
But 9, the fact that she's saying it's a power number and when it's doubled, it's lucky, which makes it 18.
So that could be King being bad at math. I'll just put it out there. Because for a second I was like, wait. And I'm like, no, that's 18. 9 is also a number, if I remember right. It's 9 and 19. But I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember how 19 comes up, and I don't remember how 9 comes up. I can grab my concordance, which I'm only mentioning because concordance comes up.
Well, why don't we put that up as something to look into next time?
Okay.
As he's burning this stuff, Annie just becomes really, like, into watching these flames. Like, she is entranced by them. And obviously, Carrie would set fires. But just the way that it's described really made me think a lot of the Carrie movies. And this almost like hypnotized state that Annie goes into as she's just staring at this grill as he's burning these pages. The description really is just, she's just staring into these flames.
Wasn't there something with fires in Dr. Sleep? I feel like they did something with flames in Dr. Sleep.
Oh, they burned the Overlook.
I know that they burned the Overlook, but I thought that there was something that Rose the Hat was doing, or that group did. They were like looking at them or passing messages maybe, or like...
Oh my gosh, I feel like this is like on the tip of my brain.
Yeah, right? I feel like I remember Rose the Hat specifically like staring into a fire.
Oh my goodness, I don't remember, but this feels
Can't
so
either.
familiar. Well, and also like I know literally nothing about Firestarter, but also Firestarter is a Stephen King book. There's clearly a thing about fires.
So there's a myth, or there's a thing in, I think it's a Christian thing. So obviously there's the poem, which sadly enough I know this poem from Twilight. But it's that whole, I think, like, if the world were to expire, I hold with those who favor fire, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But if it had to go twice, then I would hold with those who think of ice or some shit.
Yeah.
But there's the idea that, like, when the world ends, it will be with fire. There's also, I've heard this idea that, so you know, the rainbow. So the idea behind the rainbow in Christianity is that God has already smote the world, all but Noah's people, with water. The fire is a promise that he'll never do it again with water, but that the next time he does it, which is all in the book of Revelations and shit, it will be with fire.
Okay.
And the tower is held up by beams that they're trying to knock down to destroy everything. So if they're trying to destroy everything and the world goes out in fire next, fire. And don't they use fire in it?
I think they do.
So fire...
The fire also burned Mike's family.
Yeah,
I think
so
it was Mike.
Fire is a thing that is destructive both to the bad guys and from the bad guys, I feel like.
Yeah. Because also Annie is very religious.
That's interesting. That's interesting for Carrie.
Yeah.
I feel like.
And that I think is part of why it makes me think so much of Carrie. Like because Carrie had already come out by this point. It's almost like Carrie in an AU. I obviously we don't know how the book ends because we haven't read it, but we've watched both of the movies and it ends with Carrie dead. But is this what would have happened to Carrie in other scenarios?
See, I don't remember Carrie ending up dead. I know she kills her mom. I know she kills a bunch of other people, but I don't remember Carrie herself dying.
I don't remember them like killing her, but I remember she grabs out of the ground or something. Like they crush her into the house.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. So that must have been how she died. And the girl who had been trying to help her goes by to visit, and I think she goes to lay something down and a hand comes up and grabs her. because Carrie has been buried into the rubble of the house.
Yeah.
And I think presumed dead. But I don't know that she actually is dead.
Okay. And she kills her mom for sure?
Who?
Carrie?
I think so. I think, like, from the movies, I'm pretty sure she kills her mom for sure. But
Okay.
I could be mistaken, especially when we talk about, like, the first one, the Sissy Spacek one.
Yeah.
Because I'm just not used to enough, like, the, oh my gosh, what's the word? Like, allegory-esque type of, like, 70s film.
Yeah.
It's not, or 80s, early 80s. I think it's still the late 70s, but I could be wrong. I would have to look that information up. I don't know what it is.
I'm very interested for the Carrie book because I think it's the first time that we have a female Shiner.
Yeah.
And clearly.
Yes.
And the more and more that you're telling me about Annie Wilkes, the more and more similarities
Yes.
I think we're having.
Yeah, no, Annie makes me think a lot of Carrie. For having not read Carrie, just in terms of the two movies.
Yeah.
It really she makes me think a lot of Carrie. Religious, she talks about, like, well, my mama said this kind of stuff, and she has this obsession with fire. Paul realizes the situation that he is in. He knows he has really no choice. Annie's either going to kill him. He knows Annie's going to kill him eventually, regardless of anything else. He also is pretty aware now that he is addicted to the pain medication she's been giving him, which I think is, like, called Novril or Novril. It's made up. It's not real. He does go ahead and burn the book, which is very hard for him, and I can't blame him. He states in the book, it was 190,000 words and 5 lives. So that was probably hard to let go of. But he agrees to write Annie's misery novel. He does tell her he needs her to get different paper because the high quality stuff does not do well with typewriter. It smears. And he even shows her, tries to show her at least. She gets pissed off and she refuses to give him his pain medication and she leaves again. And this is actually when he gets out and goes through the house because now he's got a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And I had my times of her taking off on him mixed up. He manages to get out, finds out about the phone. He finds the stash of medications because she's got them all in, like, these individual, like, blister packs. They're almost like samples.
If she works in because I think you said that he speculates she was a nurse.
Yes.
It would make sense how she's getting blister packs then to bring to him.
Yep. He doesn't get a lot of time because she doesn't take off for days the same way, if I remember correctly. But he makes it back into his room. He's got a bunch of pain meds that he stashes under the bed, hoping that she won't find just in case she does this again, so that he can make it through whatever future tantrums may come.
So I think what's interesting is that it's a made-up pain medication. Does he recognize it? Or is it something new to him as well?
He doesn't see, it's not like it's a medication it sounds like he's taken before. He just identifies it almost like kind of a strong, he makes it sound similar to something like morphine.
Okay.
And he doesn't seem, like, bothered by it, but it does sound like it's incredibly strong.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking is because throughout the Dark Tower books, something that comes up is, like, things from other worlds and other realities that end up in places, particularly because agents, good
Chaos.
and bad, huh?
Of chaos.
Yeah, no, legitimately. But I see what you did there, but yeah. But no, like, good and bad are bringing things back and forth and are using things that don't belong in places for various purposes. If it's something he recognizes, it's probably just something that belongs in this, like, world, in this reality. But if it wasn't, if it was something where he's like, oh, I recognize it because of how it makes me feel, or I recognize, it's not really something I know what it is, but it's, it seems legit, it's in blister packs, it's whatever. That almost would make me lean towards she's getting given it from almost like a boss or something who's saying, use this to keep him subdued, because something that will come up later, because the phrase, the thing that you said, 190,000 words and 5 lives.
Yeah, no, that stood out to me so hard.
So something that will come up later is this idea that what a writer writes can have an influence on something happening in another reality. And literally, like, he could be burning down
5 lives.
Yeah, literally. I'm actually interested to know what like, obviously I know there's Christine, I think it is, that's a car related story of Stephen King's, but I'm interested to know what other car related stories he has or had, and if any of them end in fire, because I think it's the sixth. I know the 7th Dark Tower book. I don't know if he shows up in the 6th one, but just straight up spoilers, Stephen King shows up as a character in the 7th book, and they need him to be affecting how
the story shapes.
Exactly. And so the idea that he's specifically saying, 190,000 words and 5 lives.
Yeah.
What about that is important? And I know that we're talking about which worlds is Flag going into and coming out of, and what is he, to what end? Did he want fast cars burned? What happened to the world of fast cars when it burned? Like, just getting meta.
Well, and also, you said Roland goes to New York?
Yes.
I believe that's where Fast Cars is set. It's a car thief named Tony Bolsonaro or something like that. That's the main character. And it's like a car theft story, kind of like Gone in 60 Seconds, something like that. Like, at least it's my impression. We're not given full details. We're just kind of told little bits and pieces about this story that Paul was writing. And it was just kind of, it sounds like it was meant to be something like your Fast and the Furious.
Yeah.
Like adrenaline rush kind of story, which is why it was called Fast Cars. And I believe it was set in New York.
So it's not just that Roland goes to New York, it's that in the drawing of the 3, all 3 of his quartet are pulled from New York. Susanna, I don't remember her full name, but Susanna, whose name before she becomes Susanna, she'll be Odette or Detta. Actually, she is another example of what at that time they were calling multiple personality disorder. And she her alters end up merging, and she becomes Susanna. But she's born Odette, and her alter is Detta because of just thing that happens to her. And I wasn't going to talk about that until we got there, but because of this, it felt like, now that I'm remembering, that's important, because she doesn't start as Susanna. She's born Odette into a wealthy family, but there is an event in her life at that time an alter named Detta is born. And it's very much like this, where Odette is a very good person and very nice, and it's very, there was a little girl who had a little curl right in the middle of her forehead. And when she was good, she was very, very good. When she was bad, she was horrid. And that's Detta. And then eventually they merge and become Susanna. I don't remember why the name Susanna happens. It might be like her middle name, and both alters had that as a middle name. We'll have to see when we get there. But it feels really relevant.
No, it really does. And like I said, that line, the 190,000 words and 5 lives, it feels so important.
Well, and then you have fan favorite Eddie Dean. You are going to love Eddie. I promise you. Eddie, you are going to fucking love Eddie Dean. Or you'll hate him, but I think you'll love him. And I did not like the audio book version of him, but that was because they were doing a really weird accent. It's because he's from Brooklyn, baby. No, don't do the audio of him. Yeah, but, no, I intend to read this one. Eddie's great. My mom loves Eddie. I love Eddie. Eddie's amazing. I need Beth May to do the audiobook with Eddie. Oh my God, Beth May would do an amazing Eddie. Or Will. Honestly, Will would do a great Oi, I think.
We're fan casting the new audiobook.
Actually, Matt Arnold should do Oi. That would be... Matt Arnold, I need you right now to do Oi.
We
the
might
Billy
be the
Bumper.
worst fan people ever.
I won't break any legs. That is the only promise I'll make.
Fingers are on the table.
Fingers are definitely probably... I don't know. That's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
It takes I want to look up before the next episode what the amount of pressure is to like break bones, because I feel like that would be so much work. I'd rather just like be nice and talk people into it, because breaking bones is just so... Anyways, Eddie Dean has this, like when you said car thief named Tony, that sounds so familiar. He has a brother, and I know they have a drug dealer, but Eddie, he's depicted as the prisoner because he has a heroin addiction on his back. He's imprisoned by his heroin addiction. And then of course you have Jake. Jake it's actually interesting because in the movie he's living with his mom, but if I remember right, in the book he lives with his dad, and his dad is an ass. Very rich, but an asshole, but also from New York. But I think of all of them, Eddie is the one who might be the most affected by this idea of a car thief named Tony and 5 lives lost. And like, it sounds really familiar, but it might have nothing to do with anything, but it could too.
Yeah, I feel like it probably does. I don't feel like that's a coincidence.
No, and it also...
There are no coincidences.
No, and it also could be its own story. It makes me very interested to read Christine.
Yeah.
Now, very interested to read Christine and see if that...
Yeah. No, I agree. And you know what's funny is, like, Misery is not generally one of the ones that gets pinged as, like, oh, Dark Tower related.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's just so much there. Maybe not even Dark Tower, but Stephen King multiverse universe. If we're talking about his universe, there are so many things.
Annie feels infected with something.
Yes.
Something is happening with Annie no matter what.
You know what? That's funny, actually, that you say infected, because when she's giving him mouth to mouth, she's saying breathe, 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 or like breathe, damn it, shit like that. And he's going, I will just stop infecting me. Like, legitimately, he says the line, stop infecting me, as she's trying to give him mouth to mouth.
Yeah.
Or at least thinks it. He doesn't verbally say it because he can't talk right now.
Yeah.
But that's wild to me.
The other thing that is interesting, too, is the way that it sounds like she kind of gets him pretty addicted to these drugs.
Yes.
Flag gets Tommy very hooked on alcohol.
Yeah.
I realized Tommy also did it to deal with his shine. I don't know if this, Paul, I don't know if Paul has shown any shine abilities, but if he can write stories that have anything to do with anything actually going on, or if he's writing and it's relating, it's almost more like... You know, in Supernatural, when, like, the one guy ended up kind of being God or, like, a prophet because he's writing supernatural story.
That was a solid episode. Like, that was also a fan fiction related episode.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Well, because he I think his name is Chuck in the series. He goes on to become more, not like a series, I think he's a series regular.
Yeah, I know he comes back. I stopped watching, but I loved his first episode.
Well, that's, I think, how some authors are. In the multiverse, they're essentially writing the new mythology, and they're prophesying things that are happening in other realities, I think.
Yeah.
If Paul is one of them, I'm wondering if that is where I think anybody who is an alcoholic in the multiverse, we have to look at for a shine.
No, we do. And he spends his time through this book drunk or on pain medication.
Yeah.
So we never really get to see it manifests if that dampens.
And I know that we saw two other people who possibly had strong shines getting that dampened by a bad guy.
Yeah.
And so it makes me wonder if, because she also is very interested in making him change his story and go back to something else and straight up burning this other version of this story. Why?
Yeah.
Why do those things matter? And if we're going to say that Carrie has a shine and Annie's acting very Carrie-like and like her mother, I think those things are good questions.
They are good questions.
And this is only, what, halfway into the book?
This is a third. This is a
so
third
we're
of the book.
only a third in.
Yeah.
I think to try and say that this is completely disconnected from the bigger themes that he's written into his work is probably not accurate at this time.
Yeah.
I think we can't do that yet.
Agreed.
Do we need to make any charts for anybody?
I do think we will need to make some charts. I kind of want to hold.
Okay.
Because there's so many thoughts running around.
Yeah.
And I've definitely got them all over my notes. I do think that there's a lot of really interesting things in this. And one thing that I hadn't really gotten into, because I completely forgot about it, was he refers to Annie a lot as an idol, like a physical idol, as my archaeology friend, you should understand. I don't mean that like pop idol or like somebody to look up to. I mean, he describes her almost like a physical stone idol a lot. And he makes a lot of comments about that, even throughout, about how you have to interact with an idol. And I don't fully know where that's going just yet, but that also felt really important. I can say it gave me vibes of like desperation, because the like thing in the mountain or whatever, it had a bunch of little idols. And the idols could like fuck with you. Like they would help like infect you. So I just want to like kick that out there because it is gone into in this first section.
So almost like a Blair Witch kind of idol.
Maybe. The way that I think he describes it is I think he's thinking of like ancient cultures where they would carve little stone idols of gods and how you couldn't piss them off because if you upset the idol, bad things would happen to you. But if you keep the idol happy, good things might happen to you. And that is very much something he has equated to Annie Wilkes.
That sounds like Stockholm Syndrome, like the start of it.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah, well, so people get this misconception about Stockholm Syndrome where, like, you are falling in love with your captor or something, and they'll say, like, Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast is no, Disney's Beauty and the Beast does not show you Stockholm Syndrome. Stockholm is more like, it's this idea, like, you're in a really bad traumatic situation where you're relying on the person who's hurting you to also provide you with food, any level of comfort, any level of safety, any level of entertainment, shit like that. And so in your brain, you start to have almost like a confusion of like good feelings towards them. And that, I mean, it sounds like that, like the way that he's turning it of like, well, she's like an idol. It sounds like he's beginning to look at her as like a god that could be angry or a god that could be happy. You fear a god, but you also go to your god for things. And he relies on Annie right now, right? He has to, because she is everything. She brings him, she's his everything until he can leave.
Yeah.
And people don't recognize, unless you've been in that situation. I think it's really hard. Like, I can sit here and talk about it all day, like the academic side of it.
Yeah.
I don't know what that would feel like. I as far as I know, you don't know what that would feel like.
No, I don't think so.
It's terrifying. The idea of that is terrifying. If anybody wants a really good example, like Patty Hearst is a great example. People like kind of give her a lot of shit because she was rich, but she was kidnapped for months and like left in a closet and slowly kind of indoctrinated. But the people that had kidnapped her, she had to rely on for everything in order to get toilet access, in order to get food or water or anything. You're at this heightened state of fear all the time. The human body is really amazing in how it kind of processes things like trauma and things like fear and stuff. It's going to try to find a way to get you calm and help you survive. That is what that sounds like to me a lot.
Yeah.
And the fact that he said in here that he consulted with actual experts. I don't think he just consulted for Annie. I wonder if he consulted as well for Paul, of like, how would somebody in this scenario actually start to think and start to, like, where would they be at?
Yeah.
Because that sounds just so, that idea of like, you have to interact with an idol because you have to, you're essentially asking God. You have to make them happy. Oh, another good one. The 3 women who were held captive for like decades in that house. I can't remember all of their names. I know one was named Amanda Berry, I'm pretty sure. I feel awful that I can't remember the other 2 names. She had seen fucking Sylvia Brown on, I think it's Sylvia Brown, like the Montel Williams show or something. She's telling her mother, oh, she's passed away, she's gone. Mm-hmm. And the girls in, I know her name's Amanda.
Yeah.
And she's literally being held captive. They're all having his fucking babies and shit. But it was the same concept. And actually a lot of this that you've told me about has made me think of that, which would happen years after this book ever came out. Their captor eventually trusted them a little bit to move around the house. They were like chained to shit. But that's how they eventually escaped, because he would trust them to move around in the house a little bit after they'd been there like 10 plus years. One day, one of them finally realized he'd like left the door unlocked and they were able to run and call the police finally. But they had started to like play his game a little bit, the same thing. You have to interact. You have to do what he says. Pretend like things are okay and you're doing what he wants to ever get the chance for you and the children you've now had to get the fuck out.
That's fascinating.
It's very fascinating. And those women are so strong. They deserve every good thing in life. I'm going to tell you what, every good thing in life. And I think another one's name was like Gina. I feel like the worst that I can't remember their names right now. But I don't remember his name either. And I refuse to. And that piece of shit killed himself after he got caught. Because of course he did. He was a coward who wouldn't face up to what he'd done. You
mean he didn't want to live in confinement?
Right? No. And he didn't want the shame of, you know, he was willing to have sex slaves, but he didn't want people to know that he kept little girls. He used his daughter as bait for his daughter's friends who were little girls. But like, you know, if that's so cool and that was so awesome for him, why can't people know about it, dude?
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Indeed.
He got off way too easy.
Yeah, no, I have to agree. That's fucking disgusting.
Tarot card will make me happier now. So it is now time for us to pull a tarot card so we can continue on with our journey. And luckily, we don't have to sacrifice our boy Wonder in order to get to our tarot reading. We just get to do it. Last time we pulled Temperance, telling us to keep some balance by staying active while remaining grounded and practical. One of us might have done that. I definitely didn't. Grounded and practical is not how I roll. Let's see what the cards hold for our reading journey as we continue. Oh, Kat has them all fanned out for me this time, so I won't just pull the very top card.
Oh, God.
She fanned them all out all nice. She had it all like, so I couldn't just pull the top card. And guess what? I pulled Temperance again. It's almost like the universe is like, no, both of you do it. You both have to do it.
So, yeah, we got Temperance again. And we're just going to repeat that we want to keep some balance, staying active while remaining grounded and practical.
Universe, never. I never will.
You know, maybe this is the theme of this book from what I've read so far. You know, temperance is important for Paul. He has to try and keep a good balance when dealing with Annie.
Oh, I thought you just meant we need to stay active by kidnapping somebody and holding them here till they did what we wanted. We need to get the Dungeons and Daddies, guys. Or just Beth May, I guess. So I think if we just ask nice, Beth May would come over. We'll take you out. We'll take you to some casinos. Like, it'll be a fun time.
She did end up on a podcast that she thought was, I think, a podcast of a friend of a friend's. And
We're
she thought it
friends
was
of
different.
friends. There's probably 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon to us. Like, we'll have a great time. We're like close to Tahoe. Like, that's there. We probably won't go there, but that's there. Like,
Bottom line is, we love you, Beth May.
yeah. And also, Anthony. King Anthony, Daddy Anthony. Like, I've been begging for like episodes. Call me. You don't even need my phone number. Just step outside your house and like yell my name. I'll hear you.
That probably is the sum of at least part 1. I'm going to continue reading Misery. We're going to do part 2, which is titled Misery.
Kat's gonna do part 2.
Yeah. For anybody who is struggling with their own mental health or substance abuse, the National Alliance on Mental Illness has resources and can direct you to further resources that may be able to help. You can call 1-800-950-6264 or email helpline@nami.org. You can also text helpline to 62640. Or you can even go onto their website and talk to someone through their chat.
And that is at nami.org/help.
Correct.
And I will tell you right now, I have used some of those resources before. It seems really scary, and it's not. They know what they're doing. They're not just going to send people to your house. Like, a SWAT team's not going to show up and drag you away. If you are even just lonely, you don't have to be in a place of crisis. Even if you're just sad or lonely, just give it a try. Reach out. You'd be shocked. It's really helpful, and I cannot suggest it enough. This is Mini Constant Worlds signing off. Go then. There are more worlds, other worlds than these. All the worlds.
You can find us on Instagram at Mini Constant Worlds.